want to point out that this guy right here is our CEO, which means he's listening. He's going to let me know if I trip up real bad. I'm going to start with a little show and tell. So what we do is we take raw hemp fiber and we convert it into usable forms. The most common usable form of hemp is, well, the most well-known form of hemp is in textiles. It was used in canvas. In fact, canvas and cannabis are the same word. Canvas, denim, sails, ropes, all sorts of things. It actually really makes a nice fabric. This is what hemp looks like before we get it. I can pass this around. What it is you have a stalk that is coated on the outside with a bark made out of this. And it's called bast. It's a bunch of fibers that are glued together. So it adds a structural rigidity to the outside of the plant, sort of like an exoskeleton. What we do is we take it and we turn it into a fiber, a much softer and usable fiber that can be processed through modern textile industry. And this is just a hand sample. Somebody's gonna have to clean this place.
Okay.
This is a hand sample I had at the house, but you can just, if you touch the first one, you can get the sense of the difference between the start and the finish. And then you can take that and you can make things like this. So this is just a cone of yarn. But this is the first step beyond, like, for example, cotton gin produces something similar to that. This is the step beyond a gin where you actually start to make textiles, because everything we have on is made out of this right now in some form, whether it's very fine, very sheen, made out of silk, poly, cotton, whatever. Made out of hemp, you get a yarn, you make a textile with it. Likewise, you could take this fiber, you could make paper out of it. You make anything that somebody would use a cellulose fiber for. Packaging, all sorts of things. The market for this stuff is vast. Right now, people cut trees and grind them up and make paper and things out of it. There's no reason why we couldn't do similar things, but off of farms instead of out of pine groves. I agreed to do this because of the way it was presented as an opportunity to create some community engagement. And that's because we need to socialize some ideas. By way of that, I want to give 2 points of background. So I'm not trained in this formally. Prior to doing what we're doing here, I was an ocean and atmospheric scientist. I actually have a degree in marine science from UNCW. They're very unrelated, you would think. But as the result of my background, there's in fact not even as a result, it's probably would have been there anyway, it just made it obvious, but there is a direct link between natural resources and manufacturing, especially when you start with agriculture. And in the case of this, there's a direct link between processing this and our resources associated with water, because getting from this to this is a wet chemistry process. And the way it was generally done is that you would leave it in a field and let it sit in the rain or the dew, and then that water would take care of it via biology. Just the biology sort of eats up the glue that's holding all the fibers together in this so that you could get this out of it. You can't do that now in a large industry because the quality changes depending on the weather, basically. Do you get dry spells? Do you get wet spells? Do you get good bacteria, bad bacteria? So you can't do that. So what you do is you sort of formalize the process of getting from this to this, so that you can get a consistent and uniform product that can serve a large industry. Large industries don't like variability. You need uniformity. So there's an interface with water resources associated with that. The second piece of background I want to give you is that the UN identifies multiple specific pathways for the remediation. The remediation, I think, is the word that I use, but it makes the most sense to me. For the remediation of greenhouse gases, specifically carbon dioxide, UN cites specific pathways for doing that. Some of them involve just direct carbon capture and putting in reservoirs like minerals, resources, pumping it into the ground, things people are doing, stuff like that. Several of them involve interacting with the ocean directly. Has anybody heard of using the ocean as a way to sort of remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere? Probably have. I know that some of you have. One of the ways that I first learned was that you could do something, you could fertilize the ocean with nutrients, missing micronutrients, to get, for example, algae to form. And then when algae form, they sink to the bottom of the ocean. Now, algae consume the carbon dioxide in the surface of the ocean, which comes straight from the atmosphere. And then when the algae is done being algae, it falls slowly. So you basically drain the carbon from the atmosphere in the form of algae down to the bottom of the ocean, and it accumulates and it stays there for a long, long time. Another one associated with the ocean is using the ocean's ability to absorb what's called alkalinity. And there's a formal definition for alkalinity, but I'm just gonna, I sort of want to avoid going into the nitty gritty of that because I imagine not everybody in here is a big, really into chemistry. Alkalinity in the ocean can absorb large amounts of alkalinity by virtue of the fact that it is controlled by how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere. So we've heard of ocean acidification associated with carbon dioxide, right? So you increase CO2 gas in the atmosphere, and CO2 goes into when it goes into the ocean, it actually forms an acid. When that acid goes into the ocean, of course, you increase the amount of acid in the ocean. Well, what that does is it changes the ocean pH. And when you change the ocean pH, you change the balance of a lot of things, the formation of shells associated with microbes, the basic operations of ecosystems. It's a very dangerous thing. So the way that the ocean can handle carbon dioxide, and now I'm starting to go off the rails a little bit of this because I knew that this is such a potentially complex thing, and I need to make this. Let me rewind 45 seconds.
We can't do that in the one. I think it's the 1 million cups first. Love it.
So, we know that we have to do something about carbon dioxide. We're beyond theoretical. We're at the point where the data sets are showing up and being like, see, we told you. And the size of the task makes that a scary thing. In order to do this, we have to do it without hurting anything, right? We're hurting things by putting it there. We can't hurt things to take it out. In order to do that, there's the reality and then there's the perception. And from my perspective, what Renaissance Fiber has the opportunity to do is pursue a realistic avenue for starting to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in a meaningful way. What I mean by meaningful is that we take it out and it stays out for a long time. Not that you take it out and then it goes back in 2 years because whatever you took it out in re-evaporates or whatever. But as you can see by my needing to rewind a moment ago, in trying to bridge the gap between reality and the perception of what we're doing, you have to communicate very complex things. And what my agreement to participate in this is an attempt to bridge that gap in face-to-face with people that live in my community, not in some national audience or anything like that, because the larger the audience, the broader that gap between what you're trying to do and what perception of it is. And then there's machines in place that its goal is to keep the perception and the truth as far apart as they possibly can. Right now, we're face to face. That's the difference between the perception and the reality. If somebody comes in here and gets in front of me and starts saying, he's full of group, I can stand here and be like, I think you're wrong. So we're hoping to build a full-size plant in the vicinity of Wilmington that does this. It produces this right here on a large scale, just like the cotton industry does in North Carolina now, just like a lot of industries do. They make things out of what we can get out of the ground around here. And in that process, we are given the opportunity to do what I said we can do, which is to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And the way we do that is by taking advantage of the ocean's ability to absorb alkalinity. And people might say that's a crazy I don't understand what alkalinity is. It sounds scary. Perception, reality. What I point to is that the UN itself says alkalinity in the ocean is a way to get carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere safely. So I'm using those guys as a starting point. Having been in that arena before as a scientist, I'm confident in their ability to make that assessment, and I trust the information that comes out of their statements in that. So with that, and now that we're operating this industry, what I'm doing is in the process of this, to get from here to here, you use alkalinity. Use alkalinity in one form. It's in a form that doesn't include carbon dioxide. It's in a form that's much more simple. In fact, I want to call it basic, but that's a pun because alkalinity comes from a base, acid base.
Chemistry jokes.
Chemistry joke. I'm glad you're here.
It's my job.
I mean, you make it easier for me because then you can be like, okay, so that was ... Anyway,
So Michael, what's your ask from the community?
my ask, well, I'm gonna quickly wrap this up. What the intention, what you do is if you start with alkalinity from a base, you can't put a base into the ocean because a base will change the ocean's pH. But you can replace the alkalinity from a base with the alkalinity from something else. And the most common way to replace alkalinity in a basic solution is through putting carbon dioxide in. And as soon as you put carbon dioxide in a base and bring it up to the pH of the ocean, as soon as you put that fluid in the ocean's going to be like, okay, I'll take that. And it will be nothing more than seawater with a little bit more carbon dioxide in it. And once it's in the ocean, it's going to stay there. Unless you put too much in there, it'll burp a little bit out. But if you don't put too much in there, it just goes along. I don't know if anybody in here has ever tried to create a planted aquarium where you grow plants in an aquarium. Has anybody tried that?
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to do. The reason is because you just don't get enough carbon dioxide. The ocean is happy to have it, and it's going to do good things with it. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. So what I want to do from this group and within the community is to help it be possible to understand what we're trying to do and that it's not going to hurt anything and that it will be in a net good for the environment and for the community as the result. We're starting from farms, we're going to finished goods, and we're putting carbon dioxide in a reservoir that's going to keep it out for what some people say is 80 million years. That's not small change here. And, you know, doing it here is a small enough operation that it basically just sets the stage for people and for the rest of the world to understand that it's possible. Of course, this is the kind of thing that happens in the United States because we're able to see something and pursue it and pull it off without somebody putting their foot in front of you and tripping you up. If we can demonstrate that we can do it and we can demonstrate that we can understand it as a community, then we can make it happen. And that's what I want to start doing with this now, starting with this group here. And as a result, I need feedback from you guys on what you need to know, what questions you have, what issues you think need to be assuaged in the process of